All right, we're going to Australia. In Australia, thousands are taking to the streets once again to show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. But during this weekend's events, protesters chose to focus on the hundreds of Indigenous Australians who have died in prison or in police custody. This time around, though, the turnout was actually lower than expected, largely because of rising coronavirus numbers. And we have our Global Eyes senior producer, Gabrielle Briner, with us on the line. So, Gabby, tell us about Australia's Indigenous community. How big is it? And give us a quick summary of their history in the region.
Well, Natasha, Indigenous Australians actually make up one of the oldest cultures in the world, from about 40,000 to 60,000 years ago, depending on who you ask, where they lived a nomadic lifestyle. They had a very, very deep, strong connection to the land, also a very interesting and intricate culture of storytelling. But that pretty much all changed when the British got there in 1770, and a whole lot of genocide, spreading of diseases, pillaging, and as well as ethnic cleansing took place. The most marked of them, as after Australia had already been established, was the Stolen Generation, where Australian law actually dictated that authorities take Indigenous children from their family units and adopt them among their white families in order to eradicate Indigenous culture altogether. So this kind of culminated in an apology, a public apology in 2008. But Indigenous people are still indeed suffering nationwide, and there's a huge gap in terms of healthcare, as well as well-being, socioeconomic status, and all other things. If you're Indigenous Australian, your life expectancy is 7 to 9 years shorter than another Australian. You're more likely to get chronic illnesses such as diabetes and heart disease. You're less likely to finish school, and you're more likely to experience violence as a teen. And of course, you're more likely to go to prison.
Wow. Okay, so what happened at the protests that we saw today? What are the demands of protesters?
Well, Natasha, today's Black Lives Matter protests really centred around putting an end to Indigenous deaths in police custody and in prisons. Protesters did turn out in their thousands, though there were fewer than these initial protests back in June, and organisers are putting this down to the increase in coronavirus cases as well as an increase in fear. But some organisers were a little worried that perhaps the whole charm of the Black Lives Matter movement is wearing off in Australia. These protests were pretty tame. There wasn't too much violence. There was one incident of a teen throwing a bottle in Sydney at a police officer, and he was promptly arrested. But protesters did wear masks. There was hand sanitizer passed out, and protesters did keep their distance. So all in all, a successful day for these protests today, Natasha.
Well, Gabby, thank you for this update. I mean, it's certainly interesting to see how the Black Lives Matter protests are echoing across the world.